minutes past the hour of 7 meeting at the Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah. You just joined us at Kessben TV. Me watching Emo Akwaba. Saso and I will join here at 92.9. Me da wase. So do video at 92.9.
Me watching Emo Akwaba eba Kessben 92.9 and I so Kessben TV so Kessben Maakye sunie meeting at the Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah. And I make sure say any day dafofo ewo wabrabom and until was no pay ya boya wo awie die sorry waka na fa kukudru enante nenye gidi se eye den a erade ebeye amaw eno tini u breakthrough ebeba so sorry na fa wo fidie no eto 92.9 and afi so ye Kessben TV on DSTV channel 364 and then on Go TV channel 121 meeting at the Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah.
Phone shop no catering services no Jack Usuku no open say Bahem no bia won say yes bia wadwuma no won say fatapadia na ya seda twin towers aseda twin towers aseda twin towers eye tower papa tower edimu tower sebio wonu hu say wo beji wadwuma no shop na office no wo honom da wonu hu da the city center I'm talking about the one walk is here circle here danka kraka asira twin tower brana beji wudio say your hospital kakra bi na pesa wo ye na de boa eye city center city nanka se mo hia eye clinics o consultancy na ehyesu woku baby awo no wo kire kwan na maame no ton wa che ne na fa honom na wo piepie ho bi aduane wo no bokef medos dodo abi enye ne sa afi we dem patcho ye ne ntam one yan in time office space in a besen jaw edunti na asira twin towers that was circle here yellow and blue building glass nkwa Messi glass nkwa ekoye brutal omuji yan in time na yen twawo de ma na fama wa eye office no shop no optical services no catering services no mamu beza mu bia mu restaurant no so pacho mu mra yesa mu nyina mu mra na mu beje shop no elevator na ye adwuma da mu friend left no security crowd so oboa hey edemu brutal we safe the super crowd ya to park here hu and lock can na ja hoko security tight 24/7 we ya say that twin towers pay we na pedi ayen ntemwe esan wo city center to know that wo kire kwan na yesan wo google no so to the boss that twin towers na do ba penny say na penny say ese so wo man niema eye easy ma eye wo clients se na be ya wo clients so ni be so adwuma na wo ye no omura wo office so tim say yes condition e boye I left in the year adwuma washrooms ni bibia ye kama wo security 24/7 officer wo she ma wanya lock ya obeda ha mariache I said that twin towers Jack and in term ya was circle here what I phone opposite here a honom na wo do honom abehu yellow and blue building me say grass nkwa edi mu kama traffic ni wo entina wo so bia hu shop no obia hu office no pacho ye ntem why men ha ho ye ntem kra friend pay for na no muni nkomo ne bo no so da form kama me twa wasase me ti office na shase na fi we die ete so ye ntem na beje office edi mu pa ere friend pay for 0244 900 449 0244 900-449 and I said 020-511-0001 020-511-0001 now when paying phone dim come on and fire asira twin towers offices in a home and the shops now person we see suku crown person de ba ebia wo person wo bia office bia mo ye master so mo ye on dem etre no we said the person we bia mpacho bra asira twin towers now them paying for bedding come on na bejo wo share get in term o jack ade for the ye bia mu na bibia ye solid na odu han ma ye beto niema be hese na mesi akwa ma on de yes all ye in term into the rental no cost wa I said that twin tower jack me say 0244 0900 449 0244 900449 and our first 020-511-0001. As that 20 hours, you've been a Talisa office in our circle here. Yellow and blue building, grass and guan. Then your Bayport to be some be a branch. I was circle here on my bed. Just that 20 hours. I boss way. Pepe is also here in terminal bejo here. And international main country say, I'm more fixed deposit no muguswa and kasa. Omugusu yes I finish mu kan no mu yo. That's why and in term now no money come on. The ensure fixed deposit in a year. It is over 5,000 Ghana cedis afi back home. Over 1,000 Ghana cedis as interest we see kind of so. Over 20,000 Ghana cedis for Busuminsia. If I show 1,820 Ghana cedis. One sabeka. Thousand now cry 100,000 Ghana cedis. One sabeka 20,000 Ghana cedis as interest. That we see kind of so. I didn't hear in time now when the Bayport ending come on. Bayport Financial Services. Almost a main country fixed deposit almost go so. And if you rap Bonnie down in Indian come on 0245 153 283 0245 153 283 and our face is 020 4125 878 020 4125 878. Now when they a Bayport and paying for Indian come on or rap Bonnie or by Joe so come on. Bayport, I see your future now. And it's 48 minutes into 7. Kessben matches with you. Che Pam City. Che Pam Samin Cancho said, yeah. Oh, pay the best tailor in town. On one, Che Pam. Get in term on in including come on. Che Pam Samin Cancho said, Uguswaya Wadiano or Pam Ontariano. I said, Pam Aswaya said already made it. Lepachoa, only Che Pam Munin come on. No Babwa. Say your wedding, say your church, say your party, say your dear. Nigina, only Che Pam and Mon come on. 2026, only Che Pam Munia Bibia. Office entire Nina, assistant, Jack system. Che Pam, neighbors would that form. Kwajibi don't susu we also on office across beba our be susu no kono akwan bibia kama ma sene fata sene wo penwo na Che Pam be ya ma wo o wait for wa wo shi market friend on 020 683 7738 020 683 7738 hey Che Pam or see your custom tailoring in common and share the Kobema watching Emma Wakwa Babium eba a Kessben 92.9 and I feel so a Kessben TV. So meeting at the man sign soon for Kojo Preko Dankwah. So and now all share me ewo a Kessben Facebook a Kessben 92.9 once I ever come wo hono call like page you know share na face comment may be bia e wo hono mama kama na fe ye koye them from now to 9:45 there me don't want to be din komo me want to be share the course wo mining and I face no the bedi hu komo nyina no na ya share the ko ene the benyina o text messages e hu hia me ye pa and I face WhatsApp messages nyina no me pa chofa na nyina bra na ye bedi nyina ho enkomo e wo fie hanom na fe ya he the ko na bibia so e wo bia no ya he the betumi aye afa ho. Medim say eye endra every Sunday besi eye Monday na eye Tuesday ana unya nte ye say eye Kaswa New Market eja atom eja na etom no na enye eye central for problem ana enye eye aban kese eye Jubilee House problem na mom no eye problem efi market ho ankasa up to now kra mean sheda nte say yes say and ma eye problem ne buy. One of the reasons Maakye say yes say eye meter bi no hu say a spark fire eye sa Sunday no faithful day no na in central for your omadwuma sene fata and indeed and yes central for anka menya sure say wa wote wo fie no a wote eye borga eye even amanone kra na nka wo bete the course wo e wo ye Kaswa New Market. It has grown to the extent that even new media, you can new media na your social media blogger for and face someone vlogging and they were there to cover a such an important or probably a serious news APM away Kaswa has to do with the fire outbreak in the sea Wakaso New Market. Demu and Yankase Nuya Bema, one of our journalists, and also Yanono Juma with Central Juma no class media group. Ne ho akoka na fire service in paying for and as a fire service for action or asheno or ma bono. I didn't know more abono. You be this uncommon. Sami and answer someone ado. Near no eating command indeed. Felix Kwacho Fusu, who is the communications in charge of communication, government communications, at the Nidia Baby Tuja Akase, I didn't see any dear and say emphata abang emfwaso. And it is indeed not a good thing that has really happened. What will happen as we speak right now? Mami kwa humana so na mene Emmanuel Dogbevi Endi Nkomo or your interim president West Africa Editors Society. You know Endi Nkomo and share the echo when it comes to journalists and how they are being treated when it comes to news of this nature and all that. Yima Bibia Bokode me official pa eba Kessben TV so na face so Kessben 92.9. I'm sure all is well with you.
Kessben 92.9. I'm not very good with my tree, but I'm gonna try. But all is well. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Same to you and many happy returns. And I'm glad you say you're going to learn or you're going to try in doing your tree lessons. You need to you need to get into the tree space and let's see how it goes. But let's start with this. Before I even touch on Samuel Ado's issue, this issue of media and journalists being attacked by other people, whether it is the police service or the security service or any other institution, what is really happening? It looks as if I thought this thing had reduced. I mean, drastically, it has been lowered by more education when it comes to the touching of journalists in their work when they come on grounds and all that. But it looks as if it is still on the increase. I mean, beginning of the year, we have now witnessing another one. What is really happening?
Thank you very much. I think, sir, overall, we as Ghanaians, we seem to condone violence as a culture. We have a culture of violence. If you watch movies, verbal violence is very, very common. And we laugh at it. It's like a joke. Most of Kumewood videos are Ushena, the language in some of the videos are verbal violence. People joke with, I will slap you, I will beat you. And the only way you would find people easily wanting to correct people is to use violence at any given chance. But it should worry all of us, young security service officers, police, military, prison officers, fire officers, Navy officers and what have you, at the slightest misunderstanding with a civilian, they use violence. The question we should be asking ourselves is, why are we so violent as a people? And we need to work at it. This is psychological. Is it cultural? Where did it come from? You might even find people using the Bible to justify it, that you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And so the only way we know to correct people is to use violence. And it's destroying a lot of people. There is domestic violence, for instance. Any man thinks that to control a woman, most men, I'm sorry to say, think that the only way to control a woman, say, ubebono, and uti impenyufo bebre eka se, bono. Violence should not be glorified. Violence should not be encouraged in our society. And to see trained officers, people who are trained, who are supposed to be disciplined, our security service officers are supposed to be the most disciplined because of the schedule of training they go through. I mean, I've had the privilege of doing some form of military training, physical training. It disciplines you. I exercise every day. Today, I took a long walk over 5 kilometers. and I did strength exercises and so on. It disciplines you. It helps you control yourself. And if security officers cannot control themselves, then we have a serious problem on hand.
Clearly, what I am watching now on television and on more Facebook and also Esho Kessben 92.9, helping your listeners to also see exactly what really transpired. I describe it as barbaric. I don't know how you're going to describe it.
There is no better way to describe it than barbaric. It's like a jungle. This is not civilized society. This is not how civilized society behaves. Again, more so, I want to repeat, for trained officers. These are trained officers. Any student of security will tell you that officers are trained to control their emotions. At high, great provocation, serious provocation, you are supposed to fight dangerous situations. If you cannot control your emotions, you cannot deal with difficult situations. If you are behaving this way, how can you control fire? You can't control your temper. You cannot control fire. And that is why citizens have lost confidence in the fire service to a large extent. My office got burnt down about 5-6 years ago. My office was very close to the National Fire Service Training School. It's just about 3 minutes walk to the Ghana National Fire Service Training School. My office got burnt. I lost everything. The fire service was called. At what point did they get there? They couldn't put off the fire. I lost everything. 12 years of archives, material, journalism material, books that I was going to use to do training and teach other journalists, books I brought from graduate school. Everything got bent down. I lost laptops, printers, scanners, equipment, recorders, and so on and so forth. 3 minutes walk to the Ghana National Fire Service Training School. The whole place got bent down, and there was a clinic there. They lost everything. There is no discipline. Clearly, what you are watching in this video is an indictment on the leadership of the Ghana National Fire Service. And they should do something about it before it gets out of hand. This is unacceptable. No civilized society should condone this kind of behavior from trained officers. Even if the civilians were provoking them, they should be the ones controlling and bringing the situation under control and managing it with expertise and professionalism. You can't tell me that these are professionals. These people are behaving like hooligans. These are not professionals. This is not professional behavior. There's no way. I'm a professional journalist. I get provoked all the time. I carry myself with grace. That shows quality professional conduct. This is shameful. And the Ghana National Fire Service should be ashamed of itself if this is how their officers behave. Of course, I know there are good officers in the service, but these ones are a very bad example of the service, and something has to be done about it.
Clearly, where you're drawing my attention to has to do with the kind of people we are bringing into the service. Is it that these people do not have the work at heart? They just want some form of employment. To see them, have their daily bread. And for that matter, they would just want to get into it because they saw the opener and then they went in. So truly, in their minds and in the work that they are doing, they do not really, see themselves working as it is that the profession will have to deal with them. Now, listen to this. If you hear the DO2 Lieutenant Aka, who is fire service, one of their lieutenants, giving reasons that these journalists, especially Samolado and the rest, were obstructing them in terms of their work. And that is why this thing happened. And they did not beat the said journalist or probably the media men around, including the ordinary citizens who were even around. When you hear reasons like this, what do you want to say about it?
I didn't know the new PRO for Ghana National Service until this incident happened. And I feel very embarrassed for the Ghana National Fire Service. That is not public relations. That is completely unprofessional for a public relations officer to lie against the facts. This video you and I are watching, are not AI generated, unless somebody comes later to say these are AI generated. And there are ways to check whether these are AI generated. These are not AI generated videos. These are actual videos of incidents that happen. And to say this didn't happen is to insult the intelligence of Ghanaians. That is not public relations. Public relations has ethics. You don't have to lie to do public relations. It's embarrassing.
So Emmanuel, listen to this. This is what he says. That as in DO2 Desmond Aka, the National PRO for Ghana National Fire Service, he says that our men did not assault the journalist. They seized his phone because he was recording an altercation at the fire scene without permission.
Which public relations school did he go to train? And they told him that they taught him in public relations school that journalists need permission to report public incidents.
Very interesting.
No, for Christ's sake, where did he learn that from? As a PRO. He went to PRO school and they taught him. Did he go to Ghana Institute of Journalism? And they taught him at GIJ that journalists need permission to report incidents in public? Which journalism? No, I would like to know the journalism school he went to, and I would love to meet his professors. And that they taught him that when an incident is occurring in public, and there is a journalist around who has clearly identified himself, like in the case of Sami, to say, look, I'm a journalist, and that he needed permission to record altercations. Look at this officer I'm watching on this video,
exactly,
using his helmet to hit this individual. They've torn his shirts, literally stripped him naked, and are hitting him. You tell me you need permission to record this in public? They were not in their bedrooms. In fact, even if they were in their bedrooms, and there is sufficient indication that they have stolen public money and they have hidden it under their bed, it is legitimate for a journalist to find a way and go into that bedroom and gather that evidence under their bed. It is legitimate. Once there is enough evidence that you have touched public resources and you are hiding it in your private apartment, and a journalist has sufficient reason to believe that indeed the money reported missing in your office is hidden under your bed, the journalist is under obligation to find every necessary opportunity, available possibility to go into your room, go under your bed, and film the hidden money and show it to the public, because it is public money. Once you touch public money, that barrier between privacy and public is bled. It's completely wiped off. If it's your own money, you go to work and you are paid your salary at the end of the month, and you decide to go and buy a barrel of akpeteshi and drink it the whole month, that is your private business. But even that, because of your health and the problem you will bring into the public health system, the journalist would be interested. Because if you get sick, you will be a burden on the public purse. And it will be in the interest of the reporter to report that this man has bought a barrel of akpeteshi, kept it in his room, and he's drinking it, and he will be sick. And if he gets sick, he will be a burden on our under-resourced public health system. So people should be clear and know that journalists do not invade people's privacy. But when there is sufficient reason to believe that there is a cross between your privacy and the public interest, the journalist is under obligation to find every possible means. If he has to use a hidden camera, if he has to use even people in your system to expose that public interest fact, the journalist is under obligation, and he is protected by the law to do that. And that is why even in defamation cases, truth is a defense.
I'm going to play for you to listen. Samuel Ado, who is a Class Media Group journalist who was really affected by the fire service personnel. We're going to play his tape. All of us will have to, we'll listen to it. But before I do that, this is what the PRO says again about it. He says that there was no assault on Class Media Group's Samuel Ado. If there had been, it would have been bandits exploiting the situation. Now, this is what the PRO is saying. Now, let's listen to what Samuel Ado has to say about the incident.
Sir, why wouldn't you Juma ye? Enra eja to kaswa new market one and an pay yaba for a update. And ye report. The reporter Yegusu aye yani who say a fire service personnel so not two a civilians and so I just say omo bomb the omo helmet ebo bobo mutrimu I just say na any a nine. And Yegusu aye Juma me chat. And the video na me go so ametwa ne the scene e koso na mu say fire personnel no baako approach me first and I make a tell say I'm a media person nti ono no e ko na chi ejaye enti na me hu ya ne say omu nyina se ato ho aba me so e be attack me start say omo bubo me belt say omo ati belt no and na me phone omo gi phone ni fi me nsem and na omo di phone no e ko e enti later on no and na me realize say bag e say me ho no bag no so ebie enti me check hwe na che say me sika 20,000 if you misika so enti no nia esi ye no fire service no fi kaswa fire service say enra fire service for bebre we 8 ne ba ye but o ma wie adwuma no e no mo je echi de ma ye kaswa fire station under bridge fire station for no enti o mo nan na ye beto o mo ha no pay ya they say o mo so o mo hwe say ja no betumi akofo no makwa
so clearly this is Samuel Ado and Oma DC where Kaswa and some CCA Nina. So Yima, let me come back to you on this one. So we've heard him clearly telling us or narrating what really transpired at Kaswa New Market. What's your take on what Samuel Ado said?
Well, I spoke to Samuel Ado before I issued the statement on behalf of the West Africa Editors Society. And for your information, I also reached out to the PRO of the Ghana National Fire Service to get his comments and response. He still hasn't responded to my query. I got his number and sent him a request for response on WhatsApp. I have checked my WhatsApp. I think he hasn't even read my message yet. So I gave him the chance to respond to the allegations. Obviously, Sami will not lie, and there are people who were at the scene of the incident. He claimed that they seized his phone. Under what circumstance did they seize his phone? What law empowers fire service officials to seize the phone of a citizen or a journalist who was not committing a crime? He was doing his job. In fact, you cannot even detain or confiscate a mobile phone without a court order. You know, if you have sufficient reason to believe somebody has committed a crime and you needed their mobile phones to investigate, to establish the crime, you need a court order to do that. You cannot just confiscate somebody's phone as it is. So under what law did the fire service people, whoever they are, confiscated Sami's phone? What law gave them the power to do that? More so after he has introduced himself, identified himself as a journalist. They have no right whatsoever to confiscate his phone. Now the question is, how do we stop this? I think it is high time media houses invest in legal support for their reporters.
Okay.
Class media should sue the Ghana National Fire Service as many times as possible. They should be sued. If a policeman beats a journalist, sue him individually, sue the institution. If we continue to sue them and insist on the law being applied, I'm sure people will think twice. Service officers will think twice before they raise their hands against a journalist. Journalists get even assaulted at national events where they have been accredited with tags on their neck. They get assaulted in everybody's view, in plain view. It's a dangerous thing. You can't do that. It does not reflect well on the service. It does not reflect well on our country. Ghana is very highly respected. Anywhere I go in Africa, the countries have high regard for Ghana's democracy, high regard for our system. And then we continue to do this to ourselves. Then they look at us and say, oh, so we are not even different, from you. Why would if this was happening in Uganda, you won't be surprised because Museveni is acting like He's the king of Uganda, and he's going around with his soldiers and police and assaulting his citizens and killing them and shooting people who are going to political party rallies. But this is Ghana, where everybody else looks at us to say, oh, Ghana is better. They have peaceful handover of power. They have peaceful elections. They have democracy. The systems are working. Nigerians envy Ghana a lot. But then they see this video and they are like, oh, we are not any different. This is embarrassing. And Ghana's ranking on the World Press Freedom, is going to decline. And we have not been doing well at all. Ghana has been declining, and it doesn't reflect well on us. It affects investments. If investors see this, they will be worried. They are thinking of security. They are thinking of tenure of their investment. If you have security service officials behaving this way to your oath against your own citizens, what would they do to foreigners? It does not speak well of us. It does not reflect well on the security services. And I think we should start as journalists pushing for a law to criminalize attacks on journalists.
Okay.
In 2024 October, I was the keynote speaker at the Africa Czech Summit, which was held here in Accra. And I made a proposal that we need a UN special tribunal to try crimes against journalists. And I went to a UNESCO conference in Addis Ababa and proposed the same. And I also suggested we need an AU special tribunal on crimes against journalists. Crimes against journalists like this should be tried at the international level. It will send a signal that journalists are not criminals and journalism is not a crime. And you should not feel comfortable, and it should not be easy for anybody to get up and attack a journalist simply because you don't like what the journalist is reporting. It is not for you to determine what a journalist reports. It is up to the journalist to ensure he's ethical, he's acting within the law, and that what he's publishing is factual, and it is the truth. You like it or not, that is not the business of the journalist, because that's what journalism is.
Emmanuel, what would be your expectation? What do you want to see? I have read Felix tweet or X saying that they're going to look into it and really clearly identify these officers, and then it will not lie down just like that. I mean, if from your quarters, what do you expect these security officers, or i.e. the fire service operators, what do you expect to be done to them? I mean, because clearly their faces are shown. Clearly we see them booting, even if it's not the journalists that they were even dealing with, the media men they were even dealing with. I mean, the ordinary Ghanaian who you were beating as if he's an armed robber, he's a thief, and all that. What do you expect? I mean, then something should be done to them.
Well, we've had one too many of such statements from the authorities. During the election, when the journalists were beating, I remember the African Editors Forum, whose vice president I am, issued a very strong statement condemning the act of security service officers attacking journalists. And we called on the government to do something about it. And then here we are again, having to repeat the same statement. Ever since governments upon governments, when they go to GJ Awards night, the president will give a beautiful flowery speech and say, we are going to do A, B, C, D for journalists. And then they go back and then they forget everything and it's business as usual. When recently there was dinner for journalists and the president went and made beautiful speeches as well. And then officials will go and make beautiful speeches. And Felix Ofosukwachi, he's a nice gentleman. And he makes beautiful speeches every time a journalist is assaulted. And then what? How many officers have been penalized? Every student of social control and criminology will tell you that if punishment is not swift, perpetrators would become, emboldened. The impunity would rise and increase. How long does it take to, punish officers who do this? We know people get arrested for stealing mobile phones and they are jailed within 2 days. There was somebody who was jailed in Ghana within 24 hours. Why aren't these cases being taken to court? These officers are not tried. Nobody gets fired. In a civilized society that we want to see rule of law and order and accountability, these officers should be fired immediately or taken to court and given the chance to defend themselves. And if the court finds them culpable, they should be duly punished according to the law. How many of these officers, the police officers, the military officers, the fire service officers, whatever, prison officers, naval officers, who have conducted themselves in such disgraceful and dangerous manner have ever been swiftly penalized? Give me just one example.
Very well. We'll leave it here, and we'll see what really transpired or what is ahead of us from the Ghana National Fire Service, and then we'll come back again and see what exactly they intend doing to see some solutions, given to these, things that has really transpired and all that. Thank you so much, Ima, and we're glad you spoke with us, and we'll come back to you as and when we need you on this matters again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Interim President the West African Editors Society, Emmanuel Dogbevi, and Edi and common 18 minutes into 8 a.m. at the Kojo Preko Dankwah and a Kessben Maakye and our so a good sources. Yanenche, you bidding common a woofia Hanamafia shed your co and a dear Benina, Yeba bidding Komobi who here ye pa. Me sure so I will feel out your office. While Nam Kwanza will call a year Jumem, also I will tell shop I will team Mrs. Siano, and come over be this Siano and who here ye pa, and Tawason. Na yentie na fe yente nchechiremu ni yie pa but I can we na fe membra so sisi be WhatsApp messages na ba and then the text messages. I've seen Masa Wood, I've seen Meshach, I've seen teacher Kojo Tepa, and the teacher Kojo Tepa says that the NEC seems complacent when it comes to the 2028 general elections. However, it is likely to shock them to the marrow if they fail to conduct a critical analysis. Now, what happens if President Mahama exit after his current term and they hold primaries? One can expect to hear more disgusting words being used to address fellow party members. Massive cracks will begin to develop within the NDC. Wide diversions will start to emerge, and there could be a total crash of the party. What happens next? The MPP takes advantage. Greetings to Chairman Odeno Hokoka, Apia, and then Honorable Eric Nana Ajiman Prempe MP for Ahafwano North. Onosene dia ode ebaye and then Meshach Asante from Amasamai says that a very big shame to the micro minority MPs led by frustrated Kojo Ponkroma. They were trying so hard to tarnish the image of lawyer Sami Jemfi, but it didn't work. They think politics is all about lies and propaganda. Ghanaians are more discerning and they can differentiate between the good and bad. Sami Jemfi has performed beyond the expectation of Ghanaians. His good work is part of the reason why our economy is better now. So it will serve in the interest of MPP and the micro minority MPs to keep shut and learn good governance from the NDC. And then this one says that Happy New Year to you. This one has come from Wiseman Maakye. Wiseman Medase Afisha Paso. And come on, ye pamjiri is a unobusianfo nyina obia eso enho eye. And then Masa Wood from Bantama Kumasi says that I will urge the MPP delegates to reject any candidate who resort to personal attacks and insult. Instead, choose someone who can lead the party to victory and dignity and integrity. The party's success depends on the quality of its leadership and the kind of campaign they run. Hashtag Bamiabeba 2028. Regards to Honorable Sampine, National First Vice Chairman, hopeful Onosone dia ode ebaye enono. Yebedin komo na fe ya share the call when it comes to yen tariffs and yema eba. So on the 2nd of December 2025, Public Utilities Regulatory Commission at the Krata Eba Bonting, that was 2nd December 2025, I would say last year or last month. The issue was that with effective 1st January, 6th January 2026, tariffs ebe kostro. Now, side reviews almost say almost carry out in line with their own sections 3, 16, 17, 18, 20, and 21 of the PURC Act 1997, Act 538, and Omode Eye Ejuma. Now, these major reviews, has to do with the year Niema and I say Kania ye yusu ne ensuo ene ehuniema nyina no esese omo epigem. Now they saying that the commission is telling us electricity and water after going through almost multi-year tariff review order. They call it MYTO processes, for the period of 2026 to a year 2030. There's a reason they need to increase a year tariffs. It mean ka say a year first holiday ya ye di ya adwan maso say a year tariffs e kosoro no. Na omo tre say 9.86% increase. Ewo a year enyenam kanea so electricity. And afi so ensuo no kosoro 15.92%. And also a cost for the period of between 2026 and 2030. These are the kind of adjustment are more higher. Very interesting when you read their document. They tell you that reasons why they want to go through this particular processes and all that. Now, making can be and very interesting how they also get into these spaces. But yes, our discussion is way more and deeper. But many Benjamin Insia. Oh yeah, Executive Director, Emma Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, SEMSA. Eba be doing komo afa reasons are omo Emma. Now, baby, now, I mean, deep into what you want to understand why the increment will come in and all that. Sadi ni na neba be di hon komo. Obi said dollar no abafom. Obi said CD no aye stable. Why do you want to increase it? Obi so say eye mo generation mix na de bia mo de to ya so say eno na say mo hwe na mutumi ede aye adjustment fuel ene ne manama nyina no obi say but say ka say nyina no from last year ya wo kan one same year basis same rain nyina no aye very somehow stable to the extent that ya tititi nema bebre na so especially fuel and all that. So why do you still want to go back and increase it? E dey pa na aye PRC for ehwehwe if you Ghana for huntia, they want to do such a huge increment in all the things that they want to do. Ebe we are saying here see insuo kra no we're looking at say galamsey insuo na then but number of reasons that I've studied I have not seen or witnessed anything that has to do with the galamsey report coming in with insuo say and all those things and ya fa ho and the person increment and all those things. I mean if I look at the generation mix, they're talking about the thermal, the hydro, the renewables and all those things, the increment that they want and all those things. Also so technicalities ni na no me mean to me enche mu menya sure say wo so obe to me ache but any man say as we speak 9.86% eco emma aye electricity and 15.92% eco ma aye ensuo enti me no ka say see no ya tutum upo umpo ya tutum reasons no mama no makinkan bi is it justifiable ora Benjamin Insia ebe kire if they are justifiable or not. And even crano say nye justifiable crana e dey na ebetumi aye ade yomanya tutum but still yeah however because they are always saying is that they always also however want to do a quarterly review, so hopefully it might come down or hopefully it might even go up again. And also when some bebre na no ababe PP mu ewo eye omem hanu into what issues questions be bisa efa utility ho and afi so insuo and kanea ho nyina no ye be de ho komo ende afishaba be sure say bibia boko de ora Benjamin
afin conversa
bibia
boko
last year to one Michelle
last year ending brother yeah ko baby na
last year to ache be sure say Juma boko de
adom ye gumo manage kakra
a few who ne saying we be hwe ne saying
afi anije sem kakra ewom because your sector no especially energy sector no stability kakra because album because dumson sheda massa bium
okay
2 first quarter we may expect say PRC ebete enyinam kanea bo so nti ani GSM e ho no 3 oko petroleum downstream nso still ebo no bekoso akufum kakra and as I very stable for a long time nti no sa sector and energy no entirely no I think that I was Ghana for expecting some good signs because say enyinam kanea bo no kufum na say fango su kufuma. It means that ubutum ebe de kakra the amount. Oko midstream and as emphasis another downstream level toll start operations and also good news kakra in the sector. We hear no free wa aban so akase obedi jumadi pa or sector mo afiwe. I think there's been an allocation of about 2 billion Ghana cedis for rural electrification. Yeah, making sure say by 2030 no. Universal coverage and as a penetration of electricity obi abenya kanea ewo oman Ghana mu ha nti say 2 billion eba energy sector. It means that idea be good news because adwuma ebeba ma nipa dodo na timanya biaye. In terms of transition energy aban bone homebody say by 2030 no be achieve 10% penetration. Nti no say no so it means start solar farms bi kakra and also ebeboa ama energy mix nti there will be a lot of activities in 2026 in the energy sector but that be the mechanism normally policy is different from practice. I'm voting me develop good policies but practice a problem because sometimes practicalize your policies need so they become very ineffective but see to me practicalize your policies near. I think 2026 will be a better year for all of us in the energy sector. But say your kono say your kono business as usual case in there say yaka ba antimiambum and I think based on experience I hear say na be sense sector but I'm hopeful say bia yenua John Jinapo who is the sector minister with some of the innovative guys in the sector or my already say we creating some transformation in the sector be on the bomb modern ama sector na fan into mopafra omunso amunye ready some best sign the sector no because so actually because of them.
I was even going to ask you about Ora John Jinapo and then the ministry Okremu Sisiano 1 year o share ejuma akoso. Are you impressed with the way and MSC akoso?
I think yes I am but mean to make us 100% because if you look at the sector PRC Juma Diaudino, even though PRC directly is not linked to the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, I was not impressed by the various activities of the PRC, especially when it comes to tariff announcements and maybe tariff adjustment. I think that we could have done better in that regard. But main fault because PRC is not directly under him. PRC as established is directly under the presidency and TBB Omuyebiano president and supervisor Esho Mase. We are in free I think that our upstream needs a lot of innovation. And last year was a year Nanka was a review upstream regulations in terms of fiscal regulations, any other maybe institutional regulations here sector na very robust. I think yantima we in last year. So ama sector no upstream no is in comatose. Upstream ni wanesa. It's in serious crisis. I think that as a minister ne was man ni koso pa enyesa fango na yenya no kroma na yenya se yenya mfa so papa bi amfiri mu ebe my Ghana, especially looking at the levels output compared to global output levels and looking at the prices international market I think that if we are not very critical yenya mfa so pa bi amfiri in the next in the last 10 or so years and the future doesn't look good for our petroleum upstream. We any free I think that there are other reviews Okaso Obeya as at now meaning say what you may and these are the weaknesses I think that he needs to address. One is that Okaso Betty some green transition fund, which was in the 2025 budget. I think we could not establish that fund. Even if it is established, it's not in public. And seed fund be associated name. So I think that it also addresses honum. The 2025 budget also had a lot of renewables, energy development, as a development of renewable energies in terms of mini grids, 35 mini grids of hydro across the country last year. And to me, I don't know, say maybe 2026 near the Bay Area, and also very problematic. We and if you think that the downstream and also there were a lot of challenges about downstream with respect to evasion of taxes. Even GRA had to come in at a point in time. Amount for me a load products some of the Kobokena. Then so products na belande ye hanom. I think that Kessben ye can once yes. So that thing ye ensure that GRA and Kasa Energy Ministry in Kasa because Energy Minister only is supervisor of how these products land into the country through the MPA ministry into me and Kasa. Yes, IT even within the MPA framework. Yenuanum Comac a release report who said some companies were overloading in terms of more retail outlets or more products are now multimiton or chromano. Now they were the more product sales and volume sales were questionable. Bepimen Yenshadante report to be free. The Ministry of Energy and Green Transition as well as the MPA with respect to whether those companies no mudi surgeman you penalize you or more sanctions be by and I think being a minister these are issues also take it seriously to get the trust of people and make sure that you are very very transformative in terms of resolving the various challenges what sector Muntino honson ya nteho asem de bia sa but in overall no, I think that the major thing Ghana for expecting is electricity was stable because Ghana for normally we don't look at the minor issues ye per se Kenya is stable and I think Kenya no is stable nti hono no ye be bona baso from say obey azumi office no Kenya no in terms of interruptions whether duration whether frequency I think that there's been some form of stability maybe area say this year met mark and say averagely Kenya dumukrana and drew 20 I think maybe maximum of 10 and I say duma in terms of duration no aduma bia maybe endru 1 hour krana Kenya na so it tells you that I think that omo on any utilities no to me aya diama Kenya no is stable and that also tells you that his focus no in the ministry is geared towards the power sector and not the other sectors and I think that power sector and yes Kenya is stable Ghana for be commendeno but we should also have to look at the other sectors and make sure that there are certain revolutions there are certain transformations every sector no at me how pretty abua or my Ghana fan into my power so I can say be a 60% is done well.
Wow, nice, right. Now, Kasana, if my memory serves me right, you did say that you hopeful that 2026 year will me you see certain reductions coming into place. One has to do with maybe you hoping to see a PRC coming down with the tariffs and all that. But we basically said, if it is so, then why the increment? I mean, for us in January.
So PURC is establishment and policy arrangement, oye enyinam kania ntumu no mienu. Oye enyinam kania ntumu a operational cost and operational expenditure, and that operational expenditure ntumu no ye quarterly. Say be a quarterly near per se cost no very reflective and reflection means that say share your energy mix na yes I share me fan say macroeconomic indicators rather na yes I share market driven indicators and basically your market driven indicators no abribia no the energy mix as well as the price of natural gas mostly no because of renewable energy very minute very minute in terms of generation no yen share fire non count here the weighted average cost of gas taking into consideration the price of it the distribution channel transportation of the aggregation of it until the weighted average cost of gas now because of the NA dominant in our energy mix no na the hydro and soka cra are balancing no so these are basically the market driven indicators ye no free na ya behwe the other indicators no the macroeconomic indicators, which is the exchange rate and then inflation. Until quarterly, to be cost reflective and ensure that utilities are able to recover or more cost, in the quarterly format, your operational expenditure and also quarterly adjustment to take care of these things. And PRC assign what the other side capital expenditure side. And capital expenditure you review sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 4 years, depending on government also. Sometimes create me review even 1 year, because if you look at some of the adjustments done in 2018, for example, where multi-year adjustments are a 1 year adjustment after 2019, 2022, which is from 2019 to 2022 was about 3 years. Every 2022 and about 2025 also about 3 years. We had a recent multi-year adjustment which takes care of the capex or capital expenditure now. This current government is looking at it for about 4 years, which is 2026 to 2030. So and also a 4 years. So we have the operational, which is quarterly adjustment, and we have the capital expenditure, which is multi-year adjustment. Nti ohwe ntumuna PRC etumu in December, which is 2nd of December 2025 now. Na enu ye capital expenditure to take care of or more investment to modernize infrastructure and ensure that within the next 4 years, Betima recover this particular investment in terms of expanding infrastructure, modernizing, adapting new technology so that the system will be very efficient, so that system losses are reduced, reduced. So the 9.86%, for your friend is saying, I buy a announcement in 2nd December for the 4 years of the next 4 years between 2026 and 2030, so that they be making sure say utilities and investment be on in terms of modernizing infrastructure and also be updating aged infrastructure, revitalize, retool, will be taken care of by the electricity end user. So it is different from the quarterly.
Why are we the ones to do that, to bear a cost of person who upgrade equipment? I mean, the investment you do, because semi to still yes.
So I think that I personally have a challenge with it because historically, sometimes we hear some of these multi-year adjustments subsequent years, mostly the objective of the multi-year is that let's modernize infrastructure. So modernization of infrastructure now will reduce to relaxed or declined system losses and boost efficiency in terms of revenue mobilization. But experience, not even experience, evidence from data nature and say abribia yebetu kaniam based on multi-year, your system losses may even increase. So yes, it doesn't support that because in 2018, for example, now system losses are around 24%. When the multi-year adjustment came into effect on the first quarter of 2019, and I found that the first month of 2019, 2019 report by in terms of system losses, now you are jumping from 24 to 30%. So the idea that capex investment, and I say use multi-year to address capex issues so that system losses will reduce, is not entirely true. Achieve that particular purpose there. For example, in 2022, adjusted tariffs, and also the same thing. I think tariff was around 27%. System losses were around 27%. Yet the tariff multi-year buy, system losses jumped to 30.6% until 2024. It's about 27%. System losses, and I say adjusted tariff upwards to take care of capital expenditure for modernization, investment, and other areas. System losses, that issue based on evidence, is not supported by those increments. So there's a fundamental problem in the power sector, I think, that we need to address. One critical problem in the power sector is what we call the hidden cost. And hidden cost, sometimes it takes care of our 50% of revenue and can say mobilizing. Inti your revenue recovery rate based on data Ghana buying Ediama Bank of World Banker. Actually say yenyinam kania no sika was say utilities edge, especially the discos edge from yen consumers 50%. So revenue say 100 or only 50%. So when anytime you lose uncollected revenue, like lose 50%, I was a wojia, it becomes cost. Right? And says you can ultimately says you can crana. You don't need this capital investment, and I say quarterly investment, and sana what to me modernize the infrastructure. Because these are huge sums of money. For example, this year, on a monthly basis, we expect that 1 G due to this tariff adjustment, cumulatively we find say menfa 9.86 ninka home, but based on quarterly adjustment crano, if cumulatively I increased by about 18% in the last year. In the last year usika was also from the power sector anya crano it was also on monthly basis more than 2.5 billion Ghana cedis. That's how much I expected to collect, right? So we even various rigorous analysis crana it was a 1 G cry in a month about 3 billion Ghana cedis from the end user, but ube say utilities akwaji 1.7 akwaji 1.6 billion akwaji 1.3 billion akwaji 1.4 billion na ye bona baso but 1.3 billion is only 50% of the oji. Nti se want manji sika ni nyina eyeka ena ebo, so huge losses, huge uncollected funds from utility from end users ni bi no eno so generate eka edimayen. So regardless of capital multi-year adjustment obey still eka ho. Uye no free hon so a contracts ni bi nso e asan a emwayen.
Okay.
Generation contracts ni bi amwayen. Because share ye West Africa ha in terms of data ye publish ye cry the World Bank. Share West Africa ha. One of the countries the generation cost e was ropan Ghana. We are doing almost 6 cents per kilowatt hour. And no crown is because of the appreciation of the cedi against the dollar. But so you see purchasing power parity, we are likely doing around 12 cents per kilowatt hour. One of the highest in the sub-region. One of the highest in low middle income countries. One of the highest in sub-Saharan countries in terms of generation cost. So it tells you that contract na any generators ni bi call contract na e was ro. This a contract no was ro ma o end user price ni e kosro. O end user price no kosro ebinum ebe evade.
Obviously.
They will evade it. So anytime we increase the tariff, thinking that we increase the tariff to reduce system loss, you are not doing that. You are increasing the tariff to increase system loss. You are not reducing it because it creates a boomerang effect. The boomerang effect is that why increase the tariff now person revenue more and even a lot of people will even evade it more because tariff
yeah.
And that is why in their own report by Energy Commission and even the PRC, abribia ombe increasing multi-year system losses increase. Because adeni ya ketu akra nipo na ntimentua. Then a chira say a cost ro betimetua. Say wahu. And when you increase the multi-year tariff, even revenue, uncollected revenues increase. Because for example, government of Ghana ontia ne tariffs.
Yes.
And if you take the energy sector recovery program report by the World Bank and maybe IMF, omu ntua nyinam kanea no aban ka ho.
Omu de kapapa.
Aban eka ho. Nti se aban eka ho na se aban ntua 2 cedis. Unim so ntua 2 cedis. No was increase 2 cedis they got 3 cedis. Na still ontua, which means your own collected revenue no ebe increase.
Obviously.
You get it. So you are not solving the problem. Right? So me know here agreeing say Yebeka say adentina ye increase enyinam kanea for multi-year.
Yes.
The entire increasing is that there's a system challenge. It was a period in addressing. There's a system challenge. It was a policy makers led by the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition and the presidency addressing. They are not willing to address it.
Which is?
The policy problem is that your cost of power generation is expensive. How do you address it? Which energy mix will make your cost of power very affordable? That is how we should be thinking. But we are not thinking that way. Because a status quo, business as usual. Energy mix yenko thermal. You say thermal na yenko ho. Yeko thermal la yento free wapku. Ne board in cry yento because at the end of the day someone will benefit from it. You say alternative fuel sources. Ne board in. Still you say yeto. even say a tikrase thermal abu through year 9 deals a yenya thermal air flow inflows no air doso no still ye o say to fuel no yen to fuel no nsi wo because we be able to mercy ye to fuel so no ne boarding but because of me cut fuel the yen to so it's a systemic problem e was say ye address it with conscience say address ya menua enko ba bia now the entire make catch say multi-year no NMA omo increase multi-year even I had problems with even omo computations because o share inflation omo use here
yes
o share dollar rate omo use here I think that inflation was on a higher side because o projection chire will say a moving average waiting in quarterly or in waiting in yearly moving average chire will say inflation no is so better than the 8% that we use here or than the 12% that we use here. In this simulations chira sa then any kwan say auto enyinam kaniam by 9.86%. Yenye no free ho. O sign the exchange rate na o simulation say exchange rate no kra no o 12 na 11 now use here no e betimi aye lesser than that because Bank of Ghana is still working.
I think they use 12.3715
right?
Yes.
But now projection simulation say the CD could have been around 10 Ghana cedi 45 pesos, right? But because of say omo pesika bebre, and one thing I always say is that PRC also benefits from this tariff increment because within the cash water for mechanism framework no almost omo a beneficiary in the category B. Nti abribia na enyinam kania be cost because they realize percentage terms no enye nominal figure percentage abribia na enyinam kania bo be cost no PRC ni sika kosro because ni sika na oje free power sector is based on percentage enye nominal figure enye fixed nti se oje 1 cedi na se enyinam na ni percentage o se oje na 3% na se ade no ko 2 cedi sa se 3% no 1 cedi of 3% ye be me fanfa se 3 pesos, right? Or 0.3 pesos. Na say a 3 pesos and 0.3 pesos, which is a 3% of the 1 cedi now. The moment ebeko 2 cedis no, ebeko 0.66% and 0.66 pesos.
Do konanim.
Wow. So because they are also beneficiaries of the cash water for mechanisms, abribio madwe say yentu enyinam kania mu without addressing the core issues because you are a regulator. What innovations and reforms be na obet media ba sector no mu a ebema yate enyinam kania so ama obi atimatua so that o revenue na o expect no watimanya ni nyina dan so be increase ya nipa dodo na ntua and these are the reforms I think that obi bia na we leader we are very transformative no e wo so odiba so that it takes you a step away from the business as usual case but ye nyane sa so o hwe all the indices or indicators no use the two multi-year numa. I think that any question can you do 9.8% now we use no. Right? Any question drew because it makes us overpay for the price of electricity and already we are paying for the price we are overpaying the price of electricity in Ghana. Yeah, really? Yes, we are overpaying the price of electricity. We are one of the only countries in Africa yet to electricity both on fuel and on power sector itself.
How?
The entire makers say and I think that currently we are likely paying almost so we use the effective tariff multiplying or cumulating what we pay in petroleum sector and also the power sector. We are paying about around 20 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
The entire makers say we are only one of the few countries in Africa yet enyinam kania buo e petroleum so. Because you see a car power sector. Inti a kana power sector na there be a man for say you are not paying cost reflective tariffs, no. And I say that it's not entirely true that the Ghanaian is not paying cost reflective. Because over 2025 budget, for example, right, even subsequent 2026, the only subsidies in the power sector is 50 million a year for lifeline users.
Okay.
So what it tells you is that apart from the lifeline users are buying allocate 50 million more mono obi bia residential user bia industrial user bia etua cost reflective tariff obi bia ni ho are subsidized the tariff mano
that's what your raw price
otua actual price what your actual price power sector mu awie no yes I say power sector no ka bi ho menu mienu betua sa aka no enye menu mienu generate you yenkotua ka no ha yenkotua no petroleum Until the ESLA and ESLA no boom with subsequent amendments, and recent amendment I combining some of the levies, form what we call the energy sector shortfall and debt repayment levy. We are likely paying almost 4 Ghana cedis for the power sector alone. Oh, share report on the banner, scanny biko. Oh, ebiko. Yes, report on ebiko. And OMC for no be so grand here. And I hear like, okay. So we are a funny country. Like OMC is nibi hard. They take these monies, almost set you on it. They don't pay and cover be a minia. Until recently na GRA a reform in terms of the payment structure. Ebi high or say cash and carry. Utia tax and upfront and some load. But there are some OMCs in Swa. They are in the good books of GRA. GRA relax a momo. Deferment. And those OMCs etimidi can go kromuntia and nothing happens to them. So we take these monies and the report, if you take the ESLA report, they mention some of these levies are yejia enko. So you take these monies from the petroleum sector to address power sector issues. Nti me tiwe me tuya power ka, me tuya the cost of power on petroleum, whilst also buying power on cost reflecting. Nti the effective rate, if you combine the petroleum levies now utiano, we are paying one of the highest, even the highest in Africa, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Wow. And these are the issues are who your minister, who your peers, who you are buying. These are your focus. How do we reform the sector? Ebema your power no are very, very competitive to the sub-region. Ebema na ye full. Because energy cost one of the areas are to me are driving investment. And that is where I think that your policymakers was so much debiana or more drain. But Ghana we did. People just think of how to make the money and move on.
But clearly, so Enema wabo bossing in my share the wahana. I've seen the exchange rate inflation that they put there. For instance, electricity inflation was almost about 12.43 and more a day at also wahanum. They're giving you the average transmission, they're giving you the collection loss ratio and all those things. The ordinary Ghanaian now OT one. Nema ya bobo swing in effect in the same one. So intisi also okoto ne power. Na enka no enke bi oto 100 cedis. Obi say oto I think 400 Ghana cedis or so a week na asa.
Yes. So the Amit Makane say Madika Kacho said the first quarter of 2026 we are expecting a decrease.
Some decrease. Yeah,
we are saying there should be a decrease about 10%. Because if you look at the last time, which is the fourth quarter adjustment now, PRC for 2025, almost 12. I think inflation was 12.
Yeah, 12. Yeah.
And then the moving average evidence actually say inflation about 6.4 or so. So it means that inflation per percentage points, crano, is swati by 6 percentage points. Yeah. Until inflation swati is one of the areas, also one of the indicators, which is macroeconomic. Okay. The last time omutu enyinamkania, which is quarterly adjustment, I think the CD2 was around 12, right?
Yes.
This OUSU 12. Nasa ne CD no enam 10 Ghana cedis 40 pesos. In terms of percentage decline, 12 and 10 we say that's about almost 15 to 20% because me mass and sheda nyesa. Nti say the macroeconomic indicators are.
Yes.
Echiro said the first quarter of 2026 pure as pill on pill was what in Namkania boso.
So clearly it is here.
Or pill on pill.
I've seen it here.
Clearly, whether they like it, they don't like it to 2026 they should decrease the price of electricity the first quarter because every data supports the decline in the price of electricity.
But do they go with the normal exchange rate in a one?
They go with the Bank of Ghana exchange rate.
Okay.
And that is the normal exchange rate.
Okay.
Right? And then the normal exchange because PRC the transactions are oye. Utilities transactions are moye. The BOG transaction rate NAE. Oh, unfortunately for us. And the surprising thing is that you see a buying a bomumume CD. Yeah, the CD no I strong through various government fiscal and monetary policies. A buying a bomumume. Yeah, the inflation akufum. Now my question is say if inflation akufum, CD ehwaedin, adenti na power sector nyinamkania bo ekosro. So we are pleading with PRS, and I know minimum so Moshe Kessben.
Yeah.
For the first quarter of 2026, I was saying in Kania Bosote, and they are watching. They should decrease it at least 10%.
At least
10%. At least 10%. I was say echo fum. Because even the third quarter of 2025, now was say echo fum.
Okay.
Right? Because that time no CDNO appreciated by almost about 36% or so. What the strategy we use here? Omo be catch and say e kabi o we say kutia. Almost be catch and say there was something called reserve margin, 18% they will say it. Surprisingly, in the fourth quarter of 2025, Oman first reserve margin number. They brought another excuse. So third quarter was so, but the slow. First quarter 2026, they don't have any justification not to reduce tariffs. Omuni justification be also Omun reduce tariff. They must reduce tariff because every indicator in certain tariffs benefits the end user. Omonteso are still people evade it.
Anyway, they will still do that.
Now, my question in terms of the impact. You see, we live in a global world, right? We are not an island, and in most countries, especially China, apart from monetary policy using to stimulate their economic in terms of production, one area China is focusing on affordable power.
Affordable power.
Power should be very affordable.
Okay.
Because power or energy is the engine of growth of every economy. Right? So if power must be affordable, it must be policy driven. I will say power no full. Oko America ne amenoka say one of the reasons why Donald Trump most of the things are because of energy is very affordable.
Okay.
Energy affordable manner. It helps stimulate your economy even better than some of the monetary policy in the Bank of Ghana, any others here. So, obeboni humbody through strategic means, national interest means to ensure a fuel price be kofum America, whatever obeya ebe kofum obeye. So, okay, sustainable development goals 7. It also talks of clean and affordability, which means affordable no sign wo. It also power AFO. The entire also power AFO ne say because it's critical to the growth of your economy in terms of industrialization. So when your power sector na AFO, companies to me expand because output become very competitive on the international market. Ne born AFO. Especially at time o monetary policy no so any reference rate no ewo fum ewo kwan because bosuya ebo no AFO obi ko bosuya ne bo AFO. Ndi se bosuya bo AFO a de ebetimi aboa ma production industrialization akosoro no the cost of power. Now, Uteki 2025, Ghana submitted a report to the Mission 300, what we call the Energy Compact Report. Now, Energy Compact Report, they submitted to the Mission 300 to attract investment into our power sector. Yes, I'm saying an analysis of some countries almost submitted a report to be.
Okay.
Now, those countries include Zambia, Tanzania, Senegal, Ghana, and Zimbabwe. Now, we countries now me body ni na Ghana one of the countries ne nyinam kania boyedin.
Wow.
Yes, it tops. Aside say nyinam kania boyedin no, yensu na ye country is top with higher system losses. The American nyina ni say onyinam kania boyedin a only South Africa ntimi compete in terms of productivity.
Okay.
Ntina yeti krom ha ye import ni free South Africa.
Yes, I mean a lot of stuff.
You cannot compete South Africa, especially at the time of South Africa, the currency ni very cheaper compared to yours. Right? Inti philosophy say what we call after like African free trade or whatever they call it.
After.
After. Philosophy say if anything 24-hour economy program.
24-hour economy, yeah.
If your source of energy to power the 24-hour economy is not cheap, you cannot penetrate even within the African market. You don't become investment attractive.
Okay.
So the obeyani say obe produce power no na edi ahwe TV. And let me be frank with you here. Unim kroma your residential usage of power higher than industrial usage. Football, Chelsea ni Barcelona match. Etimi ma ye peak demand echo 4,000. Wow.
anajo odi ma yenka say ebo match ne
yehwe ball
keke no. So we use power instead of say be use power to industrialize no, we use power for recreation. Ye digi ani edida, right? And in developed economies they don't use power for recreation, they use power for development, industrialization, because who person on kra na enya adwuma ye.
But so how do we do that? I mean,
make your power affordable, and that is why policymakers must ensure
then investors will get into the space.
People are able to expand. Yebra Panyini, Dr. Kessben, Omu Ajuma, they will be able to expand, employ people. Power could be used to create employment and reduce unemployment rate to the barest minimum.
Oh, okay.
Because power, fortunately for us, your city is becoming, even though sometimes politics is a lot of things, your city is becoming very strong, which sometimes too affects your export, right? We see the near strong sometimes affects your export. But yenye no free sanka ye see the near cheaper kakra. Na yet me expand your production. E produce more. Your power ye cheap. Your output will be competitive on the international market, and most people will even come and buy from us to go and sell in US. China for kran kombe baha abeto ni madi akọ.
Wow.
Ivory Coast be baha beto ho. Nti if your power is not affordable, it affects your economy. And that is why your output, your growth, industrialization, that be a kind of government, MPP buy one district, one factory. This government is talking about 24-hour economy. But over 24-hour economy, they didn't even simulate energy well in that particular policy. And how can we do industrialization without stimulating energy, without looking at the source of energy to power that particular program?
But Benjamin, the edema, you see edema, Burkina, here.
You see, within the West African power pool, Burkina no dey cry. They say, sir, send any more. I think we give them less than 200 megawatts of power. Isa, right? Isa cry Burkina no dey Isa. Sometimes any Ivory Coast, it trade power. Ye ho chire ya omo boayen. Omo so omo chire omo ayobom. But in recent times, krano omo. They don't take power from us. Mostly, you're depending on them for power, right? Ivory Coast. So, if the entire maker the impact, they say, if your power is not affordable, it affects your industrialization. And so, that is how we should be thinking, and that is how policymakers should be thinking. That they say unemployment equals through Kruma, because the service sector has taken space. Service taking space doesn't mean that a bit more generated the employment was a generating. Say, so generating employment within the digital space, you need power, and it must be very, very affordable. So your minister, or your president, na oti abaymunne. Let's think about it. In the next 2 years, how do we make power very affordable in Ghana, so that a bit BM, because Bank of Ghana trying the possible best Obama interest rate are very affordable, cheap, right? So send a bayama power no so cheap, power ni cheaper. Now the interest rate na so cheaper. A bit me ama Ghana for na mo yen here China ni so be company wa Ghana for na best start here expand. Dr. Kessben, Dr. Despite mo they will begin to expand their business operation, employ more, because service sector doesn't employ, manufacturing employs more, service doesn't employ, right? In service sector me manya IT these days crowd me fie crowd na me laptop ayi adwuma bebre. I don't need employment, but manufacturing needs employment. And who employs what? There are certain technologies a country who employment rate in what's wrong. You don't even accept certain technologies, because certain technologies could even retire employment, because obi o hobbit maka say me be build car machinery car machinery no me de technology be fix it mobilizer fix bibia and who ain't creating new manfo.
Yes, because
you get it. So that is how development comes in. We any free yanka household level. You see, fuel prices are down. Most of the inflation is down, telling that price was a cost and cost and there was a cost. So it means that households savings ebe cost, because last year so one CDR because of the inflation rapid cost steadily, and fuel price was say last year one CDR all about 30 pesos and about to fuel. Or the 30 pesos and a better in Moscow and I never boy cost road nti nema AI. This year waje one cedi nabium, even though there are certain adjustment in terms of wages. Waje one cedi nabium. One cedi na waje no. Fuel bo akofom nti ne susu ye ne say anka fuel bo akofom yi de I'll be able to save.
Yeah.
Right? Fuel bo akofom no also utu enyinam kanea mu. nti utu mu no wa manaba send the original nti welfare no improvement bi ama mu nsesan bi ama ne life mu because o trading off the savings on fuel no on price of electricity because price of electricity e kosro nti so oya aban na wote so and this is how governance should be done. Oya aban na wote so we share all the data no in every aspect of the economy no and its impact on the welfare of firms and then households. And that should be your focus. May day na mai ahunya here and here every household mu. Nti there's just a trade off of yes fuel boako for afum Ghana ni ho atono but oboa Ghana ni ho ntono o si ni dada mu because or the sasika and savings now wa make you on fuel no edikotie nyinam kanea I increase it and because of the nyinam kanea so increase into no firms no kra no entimi expand increase employment. So youth unemployment is still high.
I
think that you see in other jurisdictions beyond the cabinet, right? Your security and Crawford Tinase, Edwin Sanuma Bihon, BC. And one critical institution could be to my Miami doctor, Chairman Dekakra, or Freddie Ebbe Stifton, FES. Nimoy Thompson, another Thompson, fine, brilliant gentleman. NDPC,
yes,
because NDPC accumulate all the data from various institutions, from especially from GSS. Actually, data ni nyina say we neighbor GSS catch and say unemployment cost, industrialization entering cost, power boarding. So within all this, say ni yebeti matna ho atini nyina so ama we atima because this one. We power borne cost it affects industrialization. It affects household welfare. Nti ono be catcho nti yenye we na atima tumpon and because the NDPC no is a development plan commission no it thinks ahead of time so that by time no bedru no ya solve problem no. But you see the problem is that politicians think they know. And normally because they think they know, they make knee-jerk solutions, short term. Because person we need a buying, or no person we need to me. Nti Ghana force 24-hour economy. You be mamo 3 shift 3 then you be mamo. Obana wanya because of say ne passport office. You see you 24-hour into achieving the purpose. DVLA 24-hour achieving the purpose, right? But DVLA and passport they are just services. How many people can they recruit? So people achieve industrialization at 24-hour economy now. Industrialize manufacturing. And how do we make manufacturing very buoyant? It's power and cost of credit. Plus other minor regulatory obey.
But did you hear one of the reasons that they gave, one of the things that they said about the 24-hour service was that they're going to get some form of unique meters for these industries to use so that now come power no etumia perform. I think I heard something like that.
Yeah, so there's this argument and that is what happens in other jurisdictions. If you take South Africa, for example, if you take Zambia, for example, in other countries, especially North African countries, mostly their industrial power is quite cheaper compared to residential power.
Okay.
And they do so because they want residential power or residential users to conserve power, right? Okay. And they want their output to be very competitive on the international market. Nti sano omushe da tu omunda industry power no so. Nti ne bo den because on person mo output no very cheaper, right? No mama enyina fie de no akosoro because if fie de no cheaper ube use no anyhow. Wo de be
so dia
e was sura ube use ube adwin beto ho unso esinsi so enkofie MP
yeah
so the person so the argument there is that yenhwe say ebema time user tariffs and a service based tariff ebema ye industrial sector no the tariff no be cheaper and these are conversations are koso the 24-hour economy ni kase on person mo tariff bi ba time of use tariffs are ebema ye industrial sector na anya cheaper tariffs are one of the ways e bit me show right but aside so ebema tariff no cheaper which it must be cheap no you also have to look at the generation O philosophy na policy na odeba no. Do we have the capacity to meet the policy? Make sure policy document no. I'm say you see economic zones. You see digital hubs. One of the areas that use power pie the digital world. Use power. They use power. In this, who see digital hubs across the region? Who see economic zones across the region? Who see industrial hubs? Ube here in excess of 1,000 megawatts of power. If actually a policy now also person implementing a genuine policy will be implemented effectively, and yet no keke na odiaka. Do you have that power? You don't. So me that be a man for a 24-hour. I think they can effectively implement that policy maybe in the next 2 years.
Wow.
No, not now. Not now. If you look at what they are doing, maybe the 24-hour economy will be about DVLA, will be about passport office, will be about service. But to effectively implement based on the blueprint number in terms of the economic zones and other things, it will be the next 2 years. They cannot do it now.
So the service industry can benefit.
Yes, maybe they will benefit service, but service doesn't create the jobs we want them to create.
Yeah, that's my problem too.
It doesn't create the jobs we want them to create. We want to create industrialization. That means that you need power. It must be affordable.
This issue of what can BBC free BB generation mix. Me boom team me obi baby sir. The normal Ghanaian who want to ask the same thing I'm asking. You wa kosombo dam.
Yep.
You wo bui.
Yep.
You wo ayekpon.
Yep.
You say no you wo IPPS BB the IPPS.
Yeah.
Omo system name. You wo BB the renewable energy. You wo thermal. Also generation mix you wo hydro. You wo thermal. Sanya mani nyina me bobo so nyina aboade ne T3 ne T2 ne de ekeka ho nyina chi still la yes I ka kire yes enema boarding tariffs ne boarding ye we nyina bi.
Okay, so the energy mix the for hydro is cheaper. I think the cost of hydro is around 4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's one of the cheapest, and your thermal no a problem. Right, until you hear energy mixer, sometimes we do 35-65. Recently, we heard the PRC buyer, PRC Professor Catcher and said in the next 4 years, we are likely going to do hydro 28. This hydro 28, it means that thermal will be 72. Right.
Thermal
and a gas for no.
Gas for
no.
And a hydro no.
Suo for no. Hanti Akosombo Dam. Bui pong and hydro nti so for no hydro and gas for no thermal.
Okay.
All right. Nti say ye 72 thermal thermal no ne boarding.
Okay.
Right. Thermal no boarding. And nti thermal no boarding even though you say you produce gas for her. Gas no yanya in abundant.
Yes.
Right. But gas no yanya in abundant because of say it's pegged on international market benchmarks no. A money boarding. This is all the gas generative power ni boarding. Right? And there are certain gas supply contracts and so I share the energy sector recovery program report now. Gas supply contracts be yes sign na emwa. Until politicians you sometimes you laugh at them. Oshe first 2019 the omo buy no ho. 2019 they were able to tell us the which we call the energy sector recovery program report. 2019 they were very categorical in telling us the cost that Ghana incurs as a result of that excess capacity of gas supply or off-taker charges. But okay, 2021 report na energy sector no omu cost ni nyina free because politicians realized that we were knowing too much about some of the silly policy mistakes they did. Into new energy sector na omo ka chen say yes, your gas supply no a high end. And I think we tried the 2019 original document gas was costing us about $800 million annually. And yes, sika me no ne boss aka no politician be kwat na ho e make decision kwa no e cost me no $800 million annually. You get it. So your gas supply contract, because we signed bad contracts, silly contracts, ema o cost of thermal generation e kosro. Nti say kosro na ye weti any hydro na still obo be kosro. So if you take Zambia for example, almost submit your mission no. Zambia, what Zambia did is that let's go more of renewable energy.
And any day,
Solar
Oh, okay.
Even Zambia's case, Ghana no, you define it based on the Renewable Energy Act no. You define in fact large hydro sun ka ho. Say hydro akosumbo a ebro 100 megawatt na you count no as renewable.
Okay.
But mini hydros no you find say 100 megawatts or below. But because Zambia they don't look at them, they just call everything renewable. Hydro kwa renewable. And omodi solar abeka ho. And omodi other renewable energy sources abeka ho. What they do is that because they have a feed-in tariff system which takes care of initial cost of investment. Omo catch on say solar ni yede ba. Asase ni bo be den. 5 years. Obetua reflective kakra because cost of investment. Into betua aboarding. After 5 years ni better so. And no credit they did it.
Wow.
They did it. So all the solar ni ba inside now asase no utua aboarding no. 5 years after feed-in tariff na exhaust here what tuya the cost no. Abe operational expenditure. Until you don't need the initial investment again. Now my tariff no boy ding. In this way you buying crown house what is what. Let's look at solar as an alternative. Now you're building in the feed-in tariff system. You know, because I think our feed-in tariff is about 60, solar is about 60 pesos per kilowatt hour. Right? In the 60 pesos per kilowatt hour, in the next 10 to 15 years, is also 50 pesos per kilowatt hour now. And even 10 years now. Is also, say, you 50 pesos per kilowatt hour, and 60 pesos per kilowatt hour. You bet around 30 pesos per kilowatt because it only takes care of operations. Now, and what you buy more. That is how you should communicate. And one challenge about your kind of politics, they say ministries don't communicate.
Okay.
In terms of policy formulation.
Okay.
Me must study there's no cross-sectorial policy. We say energy ministry a standalone or any day. Now Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology.
Yes, Science and Technology.
Also any day different. We say Minister of Industry and Employment and Industry or something like that. Also, they're different. But there should be a cross-sectorial, cross-ministerial policy. Minister Nebeka say, "Chale me force one in Namkania Koseyo, me force one in industry. Ajuma say no bit marketing."
Okay.
Ajuma met marketing. Ajuma say. Na environment to say, "Ah, creating Juma na emission level beko say." Obetimate so saying, "Mesume for swama emission into swanaba," and that is how ministry should communicate. But unfortunately for us, Ghana, no, we just vote for the politician and they do whatever they want to do.
Lawrence says that these are conversations we like to hear in the morning rather than the usual politics by the NDC and the MPP. Lawrence from Takwa and Ode Nedie Abano. Lawrence, yeah, that's it on this one, and trust me. You hear more of this because I'm here ye pa entino yenyesia de ne hu hawa enyema esi ekone de. What it means is that we are hopeful that tento ankwesi se ebia January be wie de na from what Ura Benjamin ekane de we anticipating say reduction be betumi aba, right?
Oh, it is a must. May you make a statement out of it's a must that PRC must decrease the price of electricity in the first quarter of 2026.
At least
it's
10%.
A must. At least 10%.
10%.
They must reduce it. Yeah, they don't have any justification not to reduce it.
Robin, you better that's it. Yeah, that's a pass all by. Nice. Yeah, Ora Benjamin Insia, or Executive Director, Emma Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy. Semse and you know AD and Komo FA your tariffs one ye de akosro no from 1st January no and ye need come but what can emphatically say in the MSC corner there he is hopeful and looking at say change it has to be done. If it has to be done, at least 10% downwards needs to be done for a year first quarter in a beya a bit me Ghana for so ye ho ahen ye pa make I say ansana ye did me we no na a zike stick as usual wa gini seat ye na ba betwaso na afia hwede what is on ye ne stables on the zike stick ni hu how anema e betumi akọ so Herbal Hospital some can say wow a year problem has to do with weni and I face you know sebio won shada e hu hwe weni so na kusu glaucoma ne cataract say enko ye emma weni kra dia mesre wo a woni eso Herbal Hospital for enkodi enkomo no mebo ye pa eso Herbal say men kan che say be rest assured say weni ne ha wo no anaso papa wunue bi nani ha ne pa dia me ame no to nchia so beko eso Herbal Hospital obetumi abo ma weni no eso atu clean na bibia tumi akoyie yenom so aye mama no ye papa no na afesu nuanom wo stroke diabetes hepatitis B one kasa mu no wo ye addictive when it comes to alcohol fibroid and afesu cancer of all kinds, liver and kidney disorders, prostate disorders, candidiasis, sexual weakness, STD, bedwetting, HIV, malaria, and so a fever, padia, Misrewa, SO Herbal Hospital, and as I said, Oko, now no more equity against our so no more share and no more sound ya pa, never boss in any day canino, on share it to me sound ya one time I was signing my way in the way in home, and into the end time, now one SO Herbal Hospital for encodi and como on my lab services and so dear, number one. Oko no to yes lab papa penny o share so Herbal Hospital omo eye Amasama Stadium Junction honum and omo ewo o hwehwe mu ye so from ewo 055 5529253 055 5529253 and as a 050 344 444 0503 449 444 and as a 027 28 59 115 now on the SO Herbal Hospital for ND and Common. So and I make a say a year 1374 and I say T74 a year a dre feed diagnostic herbal industry for her aba I beboa I might be to me a queer with you no body mo point in me bo a yes I do natural na T74 to 1074 and I here now with their high blood pressure or high blood sugar or chronic wounds and I face hepatitis B and C, HIV, kidney infections, liver infections, ulcer, prostate enlargement, bad breath, ulcers, menstrual pain, chronic cough, asthma, and I face chest pains, arthritis, swelling face, and I face faces in Yinano, obetumi up a T74, Totina 74 Nibiato, na ebetumi aboye pa. Opese would do one common up baby was so dear oko a pharmacies and I face a herbal shops bia one sa ebeka Totina 74 T74 one sa ebe can be our honum and as so be free diagnostic herbal industry for no more din komo na if you are here be abenya dodo etu na so ituma koton and also betumi di bia kofia koboa pan dia from on 0246 073498 0246 073498 and after 050 1628 931 050 1628 931. Now on the diagnostic herbal industry for ND and Command. That brings me to the man himself, Ziga. Now on fire Ziga is taken on embrace. Ziga, marching.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you have a code.
I read them kakra.
Nice. Yeah, Bania by Monishu na kasari enyansha. Kakra. Yes, kakra. Ne kotoko ne baba enkran.
Okay.
Now 246 to the second Oba Ababesra the IGP. Ura Christian Tete Yohu. Now in Madi Quintia Oba will be pay a historic visit to him. Eti Yama Kotoko IGP Omutrinkwa. It me say successful in a babana. Oshet Chronicle front page Yachemutu. Banner headline ya chemutu na papa bi menim se onim no a ye fe na Mr. IK Jesse na ye ka grammar pa de awboa eduti na wo hwe the Chronicle no oma trust ye the IK Jesse the grammarian now a headmaster or TI Media Secondary School tina meta you soon pa no osai he was into current affairs intina oye analyst analyze bibia na yantia sem de o kan Chronicle na chese we twa na ni ahwedan in fact before Christmas ne kwa na ka me pe no o issue bi ho ama na kire na adwene na me born number no a na fam says at time ni na menim etana no ho edodo no kakra enti ura IK Jesse na omode aba no se we twa na ni ahwedan enti nyame fa na currency wish him all the best boss me ya dibi na me dia to
okay
nyame ya do mo kina
okay
bia president Mahama Bekasa bia okasa bia either tomorrow or nadechie you will continue this Enra meka asem bi wo ha sei. Na meka the third term of President Mahama no. Ye wie no, unse meka de hyemu se President Mahama so person say president bi ma. He doesn't even need to touch the constitution. Which even the NDC people wouldn't allow him to do it. But there's a way, a lacuna in the Ghana constitution. President Mahama bet me afa mudia sabe president. So me kasa simuzi. Lenra, I had about 5 calls. Me kasa we no I had some a kobia do obisi minchichi no. My boy Kadila or NDC ni. It me say I was a radio to swa. Your credibility is very, very important.
Sure.
And you be an as a papa no power frame no. Obe frame si min church as mu fantrem. Et your frame say ziga. Asema wa kempese wo chire mu de chire me no. E ma me hu se wa giedi. Wa jimi di say esese a church asem no. Aside that, many lawyers mienu kasai. Ena ya enkofo obodo ye pa su bi frɛ anemna nyina na me ye course ne ade a na me sa gina so akase President Mahama can still be president without changing the constitution. With the same constitution he can be president again, and it is simple. May open it white. Pick your phone. I have sent you something on the phone. Yenya exercise BCCR. Near sorry ko. Yenya exercise BCCR. Near sorry ko. It's 40, right? Okay. Yenya exercise B. The reason why I make us say President Mahama, ebetimi aba be president biem. Abra one touch constitution on amending the constitution. Any read Article 68. Yeah, Article 68.
Who 68 was?
Yes, one with Article 68. Okay. So when you read Article 68, head the near there.
A honey conditions of office of president.
Okay. So read clause 2.
Okay. Clause 2 they say the president shall not, on leaving office as president, hold any office of profit or emolument except the permission of Parliament in any establishment, either directly or indirectly, other than that of the state.
Okay. A person chose say president be a free officer. Oh, timinya dwuma bia a bema emfaso de emfaso bebre.
Yeah.
Oh. Timinya dwuma bia de emfaso bebre. Say mayor president because obani na eba be hwe. Enti wuntimi nya adwuma bia de emfaso ebebre. So, adasa obeserve oman no. Se bia why president pay? O kwakwa National Investment Bank MD. Ghana Cocoa Board ubetibi akwakwa ya adwuma bia dabi. Ade bia de emfaso bebre no indirect or directly. Say ya ba adwuma say nya ba adwuma no. Wuntimi nya now okay was say unless said ye Parliament. Oh, okay.
Yes, I'll say the president shall not, on leaving office as president, hold any office of profit or emolument except the permission of Parliament in any establishment, either directly or indirectly, other than that of the state.
Other than that of the state.
Yes.
Not just say Parliament approve mawa. Ubetimi aye say adwuma no a wose menye no. Meboa. Se Parliament ka say ukọ Parliament na kwesiki approval. Parliament betimi aka cho say adwuma no a condition no e kire say wuntimi nya no. Clause 2 ni si wuntimi nya no. Ubetimi aye meboa. Okay.
Yeah.
Then it means that se President Mahama so we no officer obetimi aba be vice president. Udumisa. Obetimi aba be vice president. Be with me. Obetimi aba be vice president. And the Kojo obetimi aba vice president ni say. Ye fancy e kwa akoto aba. President Mahama in 2020 will still be a president. Then this will field 2 candidates. Vice president and vice presidential candidates. the reason why you need a vice presidential candidate is what kind of law now? What take 66 no say the presidential candidate so on filing the vice president in Fankau.
Yes.
So the vice president and the president are all elected on the single ticket. The presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate elected on the single ticket. At that particular time, we appointed President Mahama as a running mate. You call your president. Uba appointed a running mate. So, NDC presidential candidate, Oba appointed a vice presidential candidate. It will appoint the vice presidential candidate. No more election, no more. They become vice president and the vice president. Mebwa. Okay. Eti se vice president no tieri yo. The vice president no Emma NDC no. So or resign. Or kase bi or resign. Ah, SSC appoint a vice president.
Yes, to become the president.
To support the president.
To support the president, yes.
Ami sa atase appointed no.
Yeah.
Eti appoint you go to parliament. Eti one akwakwete that approval no because Saba be adwuma this salary ni monument bebro. Eti ubetimi parliament eti bia na NDC or majority in parliament. Eti be se me pese me appoint President Mahama as a former vice president. Former president. No, as a vice president. Eti ubetimi appoint President Mahama as a vice president. Now President Mahama abaya vice president. Eti obaya vice president a ye koyanum no the president no ebetimi resign. Sebi bibi betimi ato no. Sebi owuo incapacitated. Wa resign. Or resign when you read the vice presidential office article 60 clause 6 HSA was say the vice president takes over from the president when the president resigns, dies, or declare incapacitated. Jamaica what I say. And now, what kind of president to know? There's no way I catch will say, so with the president, we are untimba be vice president.
That BBS anyway.
Say BBS anyway. BBS also can't take a system. A chance who be the vice president to be ma. Untimi some be the vice president to be. So this is a lacuna. I do a madam who bears about so many months. My consult to lawyers. I want you to be sure of other than that of the states. Other than that of the state, what is the meaning? At the parliament, and this is now majority in parliament. Next be a de kasam. Ebiana honorable Rikopoku and a babe be president. Because of President Mahama, obetimi appoint Kojo Preko Dankwah as a running mate. People vote for the president, not the running mate.
Sure.
It your Rikopoku winia become the president. You betimi no show resign. Because the agenda wouldn't be Rikopoku and as you, but the President Mahama. So they will ask Kojo Preko Dankwah as a vice president to resign. Or resign, we need to appoint a vice president. And the vice president, say, we are a former president that wouldn't be a vice president. There's a hole in the constitution.
And now with the vice president, that be and with the president be there to mean be a vice.
Yes.
And I need that vice president to so who to mean can say yes I appoint to
yes. Yes.
Vice president.
Yes. Okay. Say appointed President Mahama as a vice president. Not go through the
yeah.
68, right?
Yeah, 68.
Who read this 68, no? Now, so I say, unless Parliament approval, it's the no back vetting.
Yes.
Parliament by approval of Parliament. Now, the majority, no, approve. Approve, we are. Then it goes to vetting. They said the ambassador call vetting. So they be say, it will be vetting. We are approve. We are because the vice president. Mama, typical example. Who do we say? I don't know. Putin the two suits here. Vladimir Putin the time was so young. Or Kotina fie. Any a tuaba. No more vice president to the appointed. Yan to swaba. They said, yeah, Diana, yeah, Kotua. They elected on the Sigi ticket, the two no. But Putin the other day, your tuaba, the 10 one song. Any appointee Putin as a vice president, Dominion, or appointee Putin as a vice president. In fact, Jono or no, vice president. No. one the put in kono another by president or contest here and no win here and another by president and also appointed Putin as a vice president tell you and the Putin by a vice president and no resign here as a vice president they automatically Putin became the president because per your constitution, you know, if the president, the vice president is not there, as I said, the president is not there, instead the vice president, they take you over. So Putin became president and reappointed the vice president, you know, as a vice.
Kessben 92.9.
I'm on for connection.
So the only way a bit me I save this is somebody needs to take you to court. See, I appointed President Mahama. Yankope interpretation. That's what NDC wanted to do when we read working with Rollins. Professor Kwame Nahoy. There's a social plan. I know what can happen. In conform no more consult judges, any lawyers to seek for interpretation of Article 66. No, near share that 2 terms now. What does it mean? No municipal rosemary equam type judgment to make sure that President Rollins continues because they realize that say President Rollins and contest here and this will lose the election. You get me? So this is the whole. You see, it's a long process, but it is possible. It's a lacuna.
But Ziga, is it possible somebody can try this?
Yeah, you can do that.
Like you try near here.
Beba.
Indeed, if bibisa ebetimesia.
Beba.
Yes.
Inflation kofo. Foreign reserves ekosro. Exchange rate.
Yes.
Food inflation.
Yes.
Whatever blah 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 blah. With the emphasis Ghana is booming. A basa no. That's all more try sa kwati kwa we no. A basis Ghana for a basis so. The only problem is the NDC party. Somebody within the party will say that look no. As for this one, Mobaman Kofaka say a power drunk. That is what Fifi Kote is fighting against.
About, yeah.
You understand? A beer, but see a corner pepper there. President Mahama can be president through this provision. Take it from your boss. It's simple like ABCD. What's say other than that of the state? If you will be a president or a vice president, former president. Na nimdebi woni trima esi ehia no at that particular time but emra say what to be near adwuma bia ese parliament approve man no okoye say adwuma no.
And you think you activate that side of the whole thing where we don't allow your vice president, former president, stay without doing anything. Now, ensure say you appoint you to do certain jobs for the country.
Yeah.
So then we lock them down.
Yeah. Mama is secret to be. Anna. Who say about me? I wanted to appoint President Kofi as a running mate.
Really?
I'll tell you. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, he wanted to appoint President Kofi as a running mate in 2024 elections. Chebia, who wouldn't understand this. At a point when NPP realized that Ashanti region is becoming a problem, where they shouldn't have been a problem, their strongest hold was fallen. They needed somebody that Ghana for Dono. Ghana for a bit me and Marcus. Okay, this is a fresh beginning. As for this man there, I think this thing was discussed on Paul Adwachi's program. Good evening, Ghana. Because of that hint, so they were discussing even this provision. Say, President Kofi to be a ban. Yes. So at the point they wanted to appoint President Kofi. So we have Germany way, Dr. Bawumia becomes a president. They show President Kofi and reappoint another vice president.
It would have been possible, right?
Because you had the new Kojo to me.
Yeah.
So because Omo Makani na be a problem. It's President Kofi there. So be tini kumasi jom yes Kofi there health insurance Kofi there free maternal care Koko mass spraying metro transit Kofi school feeding Kofi one metro aban be fakati bibian mato eto de kwaji 2 million we are President Kofi is old obetimi akase ma resign you betimi declare incapacitated then no I resign they appoint a vice president again.
But the other space has to do with the feel of demotion. So I'm a president. Me let's still use Ura John Mahama. No one in the power where we in the term or be we or call to come back to be appointed as a running mate is a demotion where the opposition can
not running mate, vice president.
Yes, is it still not a demotion in the minds of people? The electorate say, what the president? What were we? Now you assign our appoint to as vice president. We with the president, by our appoint to vice president. Adeng.
You. And your agenda na obey you to become a vice president. You know.
Adeng.
You obey a vice president forever. The agenda for you to become a president again, but as I said, because you see the vice presidential office and sana me diaba.
But
so in no mind, you know, no when you say demotion.
But how do you know the way you
no problem. Who
na president?
Boss, vice president. Who na Obeka? But no, the party in the team now. Yes, they know the reason why they are doing that. Okay. Because, for example, Eric Opokwa be president. 7 January, you swear in. When you are 3 months, the vice president will resign. You appointed President Mahama as a vice president. We'll go through the process. Parliament approve. It's now a vice president. A former president is vice president to a president. Then 6 months time, 6 months after the president's office, the president will say, ma resign. The president resign here. The vice presidential office, Article 60, Article 60, Clause 6, was it the vice presidential candidate takes over from the president. The president knew what? 7 pro resign, so kone creature. She declared incapacitated. The vice president takes over. So within 6 months, they can do this operation if only NDC can come back to power.
Hey. It is mefa ayensa wom afafa ebuo we ma kakra kwakopi kumase na mefa Cove Town na mefa Mampon na mesi Mampon ye Mampon ekropon ekrapem na mesi mafosi no anama be pie kumase kese ne nyina dey say
ne kumase. The bottom line that you are going to Kumasi. You can even use Cape Coast route
straight.
No, straight to Kumasi. Rather than so open so Abeku Street. Over flight. 30 minutes road. Nina Kumasi. But me say, I'm looking forward to hear from lawyers. That is why I'm person do it from them. I still stand for correction.
Yes.
But say Bibia say other than that of the state, no. And say Bibia, President Mahama can be president again without changing the constitution.
Say omo person mo ye
yeah, they can do it.
Yeah. It is not some may but some person mo
yeah, and I see this thing that when you need too much problem for the party that's all changing the constitution to retain him.
Yes, changing the constitution will create that perception.
Yes.
That person will turn so chair.
Yeah. But okay. Say two when Mr. Sapon and a more call contest NDC candidate, the president and the vice presidential candidate, Mahama Kahun, the president, former president. On the November 7th, and I said, December 7th, Mr. Sapon, vice president.
Yes.
What's the one team to us to be? It wants me to us, so we need to appoint a vice president. And the constitution is say, Bibi and Shawsa wouldn't team by a vice president. What kind of provision? What kind of constitution? The president, Article 66, no. One baby, I say, who wouldn't team by a vice president. Then who appointed President Mahama as a vice president? Oh, okay, yes, so I bet you there are no problem. Say, oh, no, you're good. Okay. So are you good president? And yet, na Ghana for Africa. Yaka blasters winning game. Ye and yaji refi the boy.
Yeah.
I feel near Queen. 6 master president and some hold me. Me person resign. Now who are resigning? Automatically he becomes the president by Article 60 clauses. What was is that a president qualification?
Yes, and
So that is that. So I'm still open.
Okay.
It's open.
Yes, of course.
That's why we are Kessben.
We need the lawyers to also.
That's why we are Kessben.
Yeah, tell us.
So do we are barbecue?
Yeah.
Bishu.
Yeah.
Yen doso
Yeah,
sideways
yeah.
and yen penny puma
All
secret.
right.
That's
Yeah, that's it. And a happy birthday to you, Vicentia Fosu. I see you, Emma Ayer, Divine Mercy Cold Store from Franklin Honor. Happy birthday to you, Vicentia Fosu, CEO of Divine Mercy Cold Store. If you're Franklin Honor. And then congratulations to Professor Mark Apia, chairman of OT Regional Health Committee. Congratulations to you, Prof. Mark Apia, chairman of chairman of OT Regional Health Committee. Congratulations to you. And it is 9:46. Aha. And I'm a Jumediano ABC Medin Edia Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah. Leaving you in the good hands of the sports team, led by the man himself, Joe Laka. And I feel your team Nina from now till 2 p.m. It's going to be exciting midfield action. It's next right here on 92.9 Kessben TV, Kessben Plus TV, and then 93.3 in Kumasi. But I must say, Medina Mansanson for Kojo Preko, heavily produced by Richard Apiasapon, Fifi Addison, and I feel on technical Daniel Abdella. But I'm winning out. We are back again tomorrow morning, same time. Catch us. Have a lovely morning. Bye bye. 47 minutes past the hour of 7 meeting. Area Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah. You just joined us at Kessben TV. Memo watching Emo Akwaba. Saso and I will join here at 92.9. Medawa say Saudi video at 92.9.
Memo watching Emo Akwaba eba Kessben 92.9 and afeso Kessben TV swore. Kessben Maakye sunie midin Edia Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah. And I make a choice say any day dafofro ewo wabra boom. And until wasora no pay ya boya wo ewie die. Sorry waka na fa kukudru enante. Nenye gidi se eye den a erade ebeye amaw. And until u breakthrough ebebaso. Sorry na fa wo video no eto 92.9 and afeso Kessben TV on DSTV channel 364 and then on Go TV channel 121. Midin Edia Mansan Son for Kojo Preko Dankwah.